Thank you and good day. My name is Michael O'Connell and I'll be giving you a presentation today in relation to what does the future hold in regards the use of AI technologies by law enforcement, and with this the importance of transparency and explainability in police use of AI in securing trust and confidence. I'd like to thank the organisers for giving us the chance to present to you today, particularly around a new capability and resource that's being built out of Unicri, who I work with, the United Nations Interregional Crime and Justice and Research Institute, together with the collaboration with Interpol and funded by the European Union. And from this, we've built a responsible AI innovation in law enforcement toolkit, which you'll be able to get access to. And it's a capability that's the resource to guide you through making sure you have organizational readiness and resilience to take on these AI tools and capabilities, and also make sure that there's explainability for transparency and trust from the community. So, as I said, I'm a law enforcement expert. I'm a senior fellow with Unicri and previously been a director at Interpol and a senior police officer with UK policing and their national agencies. And within that, I've developed various technology capabilities between public-private sectors to address public safety concerns. And I've also advised and continue to do on the develop and applied ethical standards for the adoption of high-end digital technology. So I hope I've got some experiences and expertise that I can share with you, and look forward to any questions that may come along later on during the course of today. So just a quick scene set in relation to AI and some of the fear factors that we've got around it, and why that's important to pay attention to that for law enforcement. So we can see here that we've got the growth of generative AI and how that's going to expand over the fullness of time. And significant investment coming from industry. The technology is here to stay. Law enforcement is already making tentative use of it. So it's important that we recognize that when we speak of digital transformation in the modern age, and particularly when we're applying that to law enforcement settings, that it is here to stay. It's a cultural change for law enforcement, and we need to transition in a thoughtful and methodical way so that we can take our electorate, the community with us, and also the politicians with regard to the use and investment of these tools to make sure that they derive public safety benefits for all. We've seen in the past year or two that there's been considerable fear and concern raised with regard to the race to adopt AI technologies. We've seen that from some of the various letters that have been posed from leaders in the technology fields. And within this, they're saying, at the moment, we seem to be operating very much in a bit of an unregulated setting, a bit of a vacuum, and it's the Wild West for technology adoption. And particularly where it's deriving benefit for society, we want to make sure that it doesn't impose harms to the world. And with that is the development of guardrails. And some of you may have been aware of some legislative changes, which we'll go on to in a couple of moments, that try to frame the use of the technology, and particularly by law enforcement, to make sure that it's done with full knowledge of the facts and the circumstance of the technology, the role that it can have to play, and make sure that it is to public benefit rather than to public harm. So where are we now at the moment with regard to artificial intelligence? So at the minute, we're very much around artificial narrow intelligence, as it's described here. So we're very much at stage one at the moment, where we have technology that's performing specific tasks. And it's generally unable to adapt to different types of conditions. So it's quite narrow in its focus. But as you saw in some of the previous slides, when we start talking about the move to artificial general intelligence, that's going to be generating its ability to learn and adapt to new tasks. So it'll become multifunctional. It'll be more dynamic in the way that it interacts with data. And it will be able to perform comparable tasks to human intelligence. And there's obviously concerns around that. And that's where we talk about guardrails and making sure law enforcement are making sensible and appropriate use of it. And then down the track, when we get to supercomputers and some of the new quantum computing that will be there to the future, and we're talking many, many years ahead of us here, thankfully, we're going to be moving into artificial superintelligence. And this will be the performance of intelligence and capability from the machines and the technologies that will surpass humans in all types of tasks. And it's difficult for us all to really compute or understand what that's going to look like at this moment in time. So bringing it back to stage one and into stage two, that's where we really need to pay attention at the moment to make sure that we get strong foundations in place, that we can understand the technology, we can explain it, and we're transparent in our use of it. So what are examples of current use of AI within law enforcement? Well, within command and control, call handling, large scale investigations, telephone intercept and other processes like that, audio processing and natural language processing are starting to be routinely used in that regard. And then also we've got visual processing and resource optimization. The visual processing element is very much built around the area of optical recognition of objects for defensive measures, number plate recognition systems, facial recognitions and surveillance systems for public security settings or surveillance or counterterrorism. And then we have resource optimization, which supports some back office functions in law enforcement of managing HR, payroll, procurement, insights into general organizational efficiency, and the deployment of resources at optimal times. So these transform into actual capabilities, that are used in the field, for example, like facial recognition, predictive policing, hotspot mapping capabilities, resource alignment, looking at counterterrorism finance, child sexual exploitation on the internet, and countermeasures to deal with dark web mechanisms, and also with regard to non-intrusive and intrusive surveillance capabilities. So we can see that crime's evolving, it's getting increasingly complex, it's transnational, and data is growing exponentially. And also that AI has become a powerful tool to help us, and it's showing significant benefits already. So we can see increases in efficiency, and we're enhancing existing capabilities, some of which are starting to manifest themselves now, and others to the future will only improve. So it's clearly a game changer for law enforcement. So we're going to explore a little bit now AI applications in law enforcement, and we're going to look at those opportunities that are presented now and also to the future. So here we have an example of image analysis and object recognition, and you can see here that it's demonstrating its value in relation to taking imagery and examining tattoos and giving us identifications and alignments with regard to imagery around those tattoos. And we use the same with regard to vehicles, license plate recognition, and it's of high use with regard to missing persons, with regard to vehicles of specific interest for counterterrorism or organized crime, etc. So you can already see a significant value coming into your policing capabilities from object recognition and also image analysis. We then also look at facial recognition, and there's two forms of that. There's face verification, where it's a one-to-one verification, so taking someone as a probe image, as we say, their face, and recognizing that to a reference image. So it's a one-to-one identification to make sure that that person is the person they say they are, and is often used with regard to access to sensitive premises, or confidence if someone presents a passport, etc., or a driving license, that they are the person that's identified on that official documentation. So of high value to law enforcement. And then there is the other, which is face identification, which is taking a probe image, which is known as one-to-many, and searching against that vast database. And we're starting to see use of these systems, particularly in the UK at the moment, around shoplifting and retail crime, where we're taking a probe image, an image of someone that is suspected of those crimes from CCTV systems, and is being put against the police national database or watch list to try and identify the details, so that they can either be held to account for those crimes or prohibited from those sorts of premises to the future. We then look at text and speech analysis, and I just touch upon 6 examples here of showing you how NLP, as it's known, or natural language processing, looks to break down various elements of text into different attributes, which are then processed by the AI machine. So we have segmentation, tokenization, removal and identification of stop words. We have stemming, lemmatization, and also speech tagging. So there's a whole series of sophistication. When you layer these up into the analysis of text, it can be hugely beneficial to you. And This is some of the methodology that's used with regard to some of the tools that you see with regards to ChatGPT and other elements to the future. So common applications of AI in law enforcement include image analysis, text and speech, content generation, supporting us in risk evaluation and predictive analytics, and also process optimization and workflow automation. So the characteristics of AI and what systems, what do they raise of benefit and risks to as well? In a benefit situation, obviously, we can boost our data analytics, we can improve detection and prevention, and we can use them to automate and repeat and complete repetitive tasks faster, saving human resource being committed to these activities. And also they're good at safeguarding well-being of officers through the intuitive mechanisms that we can use around HR, repeat training, and use of skills within the workplace. However, there are risks. So there's a black box problem. What do the systems actually do? How do they do it? And this comes into the explainability and transparency of those systems. What's the value embedding? And is there any bias being read from the nature of the data that's being used? When we scale them, do we understand the complications of scalability and the impact it can have, making sure that there's limitations of harm, that we don't automatically look for system autonomy without understanding what it's about, and that we don't have invisibility. We don't know where, for example, where some of these systems operate within law enforcement. So why do we need to consider responsible use and with this transparency and explainability? Well, because law enforcement is operating in high-risk situations. They're making use of unique competencies, and their effects have a direct impact on society and individuals. We need to make sure that we balance the risks and the benefits that can come to make sure that we're responsible in our AI innovation and its use in law enforcement. And with this, we take a principled approach, and that's the work that we've undertaken through that toolkit that I outlined earlier, making sure that what we do is lawful, that there is good governance around the use of these technologies and the tools that we use, that there is a minimization of harm, that there is human autonomy, and that there is fairness in the processes. So as we can see, these foundations lead to 5 core principles, and within the toolkit that I've outlined, you can go into some really deep knowledge documents and resources that will explain these in great detail for you. But we're going to look around the human autonomy, because particularly within this is making sure that there are safeguards in the use of the technology and humans' capacity and right to self-governance from the use. So within this, for transparency, explainability, and accountability, we need to make sure that there's human control and oversight in the use of these technologies, that there's human agency, that the humans act in an informed way upon what the information is being presented from the machines and the decisions that we take, because otherwise there could be manipulation or use of force that could be inappropriate in a public setting, particularly for public safety. And also that there's privacy, that the systems protect the privacy standards that we want and are compliant with GDPR principles, and only data that is appropriate to be used within them is used, and the outcomes that are generated are proportionate to the task for which the data was collected and for the reason that we're using the machine for a public safety dividend. And then we talk about the transparency and explainability and how we communicate the practices and inform the community around sharing throughout the life cycle. And a research piece of work that I'm doing at the moment on behalf of Uniquely is very much looking at this. And you'd be surprised to see that most public-facing websites from law enforcement have very little commentary, if at all, around their use of technology and explaining how they make use of it in a public setting. So it's important that we put the principles into practice, that we align the cyclical approach of planning, procurement, and use, and also to the future decommissioning, and also the other principles with regards to stakeholder engagement and checking results. So when we look at transparency as a guiding principle, it's important, as we've seen with reports from the United Nations Special Rapporteur, that principles of transparency and explainability in the processing are contained, particularly with regard to addressing the use of them by law enforcement, which are often shrouded in secrecy, can lead to intrusive surveillance, discriminatory and profiling, and also suppression of civil liberties. There's growing international mechanisms, guardrails, as we see, and we can see here a flavour of some of those. So in the United Kingdom, we're taking a guide to the use of AI in public sector. There's the Centre for Data Ethics, and then we've then got within Europe, the new AI Act, and other instruments that are across the world that you can see and make use and reference to. They're starting to guide law enforcement use. And it's important because with the challenges for policing, we can see there's concern around proprietary use of the black boxes. We don't often know how the technology works. There's complexity and technical jargon that needs to be explained. And then also there's then the balance of public sector use, public safety use, and then the alignment of the systems to national security and investigative concerns, and making sure that we don't compromise these by being too transparent in our explainability of the use of the systems. So thank you for your use, and I hope that was of use to you. And here, if I just call up on the screen again, you will see the QR code, which will take you to the toolkit where you can make use of those references. Thank you very much.